The airport terminal hummed with life, the continuous pulse of travelers moving to and fro. It was a busy afternoon, the peak of rush hour at one of the busiest international airports. Overhead, the muffled voices of public announcements echoed, urging passengers to check in for their flights, reminding them of flight delays, and ensuring that the flow of the crowd remained as smooth as possible. The chaos was controlled, a seamless choreography of hurried movements with families, business travelers, and vacationers all weaving through the terminal. But amidst the swirl of activity, there was a sharp, focused presence that stood in stark contrast. Titan, a massive German shepherd, walked beside his handler, Officer Jake. Titan's eyes were sharp, his ears alert as he took in every scent, every sound. As a canine unit trained for explosive detection, Titan was the ultimate guardian. In an environment like this one, the years of training were evident in his posture, confident, calm, and poised. Officer Jake, a seasoned handler with a deep trust in his dog's abilities, walked with purpose. His eyes scanned the crowd ahead of him, but he remained in tune with Titan's behavior. The two of them had been through countless drills, countless operations, but today was different. Today, Titan's instincts were sharp, more alert than usual. Jake could feel it, something was on the horizon. The terminal was packed, but despite the rush, there was a palpable sense of urgency emanating from Titan. His tail was still, his body tense as he maneuvered through the crowd. His nose twitched, every scent filtered through with precision. It wasn't just the usual smells of a busy airport, there was something else, something distinct that caught Titan's attention. His eyes darted from passenger to passenger, and then he locked onto Olivia. She was easy to spot. She was visibly pregnant, a woman in her early 30s, walking slowly through the security checkpoint, her eyes scanning the signs for her gate. Her suitcase, large and seemingly ordinary, was tightly clutched in her hand as she navigated the bustling crowd. Titan's behavior changed immediately. His ears perked. He began walking with a purpose now, not just as a casual observer of the crowd, but with an unmistakable drive in his step. His eyes were fixed on Olivia, his nostrils flaring as he drew in the air. He could smell something wrong. Officer Jake sensed the shift in Titan's behavior instantly. His partner's eyes had become locked on Olivia, his body rigid, his movements precise. Jake tightened his grip on the leash and followed Titan's gaze, his mind racing through possibilities. It wasn't unusual for Titan to react to certain scents, but the dog's behavior today was different, more urgent, more focused. Olivia, meanwhile, continued on her way, oblivious to the heightened attention she was drawing. She stopped momentarily to check her ticket, her brow furrowed in thought, no different from any other traveler looking to confirm her flight details. She had no idea that Titan had already picked up a scent she couldn't possibly recognize. Titan's body stiffened further as he moved toward her, but Officer Jake didn't make any move yet. The dog's actions were deliberate, and every step Titan took was measured. Jake watched Titan carefully. There was no mistake. Titan had alerted. Something about Olivia was off. Titan barked sharply. It was not the usual alert, a playful bark or a greeting. This was urgent, demanding attention. The sound sliced through the terminal, and it drew the attention of passengers nearby. Some looked over in confusion. Others stopped in their tracks to peer at the dog. But Titan wasn't interested in the crowd. His eyes were locked onto Olivia. It was the kind of bark that signaled more than just a casual distraction. It was a warning. Officer Jake's hand tightened around the leash, and he immediately stepped forward, closing the gap between them. His voice was firm but calm as he addressed Olivia. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside for a moment." Olivia froze, startled by the sudden attention. She looked at the dog, then at the officer. "What's going on?" Her voice was thick with confusion. Her grip on the suitcase tightened, and she instinctively took a step back, her eyes scanning the situation, now unsure of what was happening. "It's just a precaution," Jake said, his voice calm, attempting to ease her discomfort. "We just need to take a closer look at your bag." Still confused but compliant, Olivia nodded slowly. She hadn't noticed anything unusual about her suitcase. She'd packed it herself, just like any other trip. just a simple flight across the country. But Titan, the dog, wasn't backing down. His focus on her and her suitcase was unyielding. Officer Sanchez, another security officer, approached from behind, taking in the scene. He was tall and methodical, with years of experience in handling high-pressure situations. "What's going on here, Jake?" Sanchez asked as he approached Olivia. "And Jake?" "Titan's flagged her," Jake replied simply, his gaze fixed on Titan. "Something's not right with that suitcase." Olivia glanced down at her bag again, a feeling of dread creeping over her. What was wrong with it? Was there something in there she hadn't packed properly? She was increasingly uncomfortable, her hand subconsciously brushing over her belly, as if to reassure herself. "Ma'am, we're not accusing you of anything," Sanchez said in a reassuring tone, stepping closer. "But Titan's reactions are never wrong. We just need to conduct a secondary check and we'll have you on your way." Though the officer's voice was calm, the unease Olivia felt only grew. She nodded, her heart racing. "I don't know. What's going on?" she muttered under her breath. "I packed it myself." Titan remained unmoved. His eyes never left the suitcase. His body was taut, every muscle primed for action. Officer Jake, still holding the leash, kept his eyes locked on his partner. Something was wrong. This was more than a routine check. This was something far more serious. As Olivia was guided to the side, the surrounding passengers began to take notice. They whispered among themselves, some peeking over at the growing scene. But Titan didn't care about the bystanders. His sole focus was the suitcase and the subtle metallic scent that clung to it. The same scent that, in an instant, had set off his training and raised the alarms in his mind. The secondary screening began. Olivia, now more anxious than ever, stood frozen, watching as Officer Jake and Officer Sanchez began their thorough inspection of her belongings. The suitcase was placed on the counter, its zippers opened carefully, and the contents were pulled out one by one. But despite their careful inspection, nothing seemed to stand out as unusual. There were clothes, toiletries, a book, and some other personal items. Olivia's breath hitched as she tried to make sense of what was happening. She kept waiting for someone to tell her it was all a mistake, but Titan refused to move. His nose was still fixed on the suitcase. Jake could feel the tension building. It wasn't just that the dog had alerted, Titan was signaling that there was something hidden, something that didn't belong. The usual scenarios didn't apply here. It wasn't a bottle of liquid or an oversized object. This was something far more insidious. The officers continued their inspection, but Titan's behavior was now becoming more pronounced. He was no longer just standing still. He was agitated. His movements were becoming sharper, and his body was rigid with anticipation. Titan didn't want to let this go. The threat, though carefully concealed, was real, and Titan knew it. And that was when the panic set in. It wasn't a simple misunderstanding. Titan was telling them something serious, something dangerous. The minutes felt like hours as the tension in the terminal began to rise. Olivia stood frozen, her hands trembling slightly as the officers sifted through her belongings. Her heart was pounding, but she couldn't understand why. There was nothing unusual in her suitcase, nothing to explain Titan's strange reaction. Titan's focus was unwavering. His eyes were locked on the bag, his nose twitching and flaring with every passing second. The air was thick with an uncomfortable sense of urgency. Officer Jake stood beside him, his jaw clenched, eyes never leaving the dog. His instincts told him that Titan wasn't mistaken. Something was wrong. Officer Sanchez, sensing the growing unease, took a step forward. "Jake, something's not right." Titan's not letting up. He glanced at the suitcase, then back at Olivia, who was now visibly distressed. "We need to escalate this." Jake nodded, his thoughts racing. He had been through countless security checks, countless situations, where false alarms were triggered, but this felt different. Titan's behavior wasn't normal. This wasn't just about a random scent, it was something deliberate, something hidden. "Ma'am," Jake said, his voice calm but firm, "I need you to stay where you are. We're going to check your bag one more time." His tone left no room for argument, but there was a subtle note of reassurance in his voice. He didn't want to make Olivia panic further, but the situation was becoming more urgent by the second. Olivia, her stomach in knots, nodded numbly, her eyes flicking from the officers to Titan, who was now standing at attention, his body tense, his focus laser-sharp. What was he sensing? What was it that had triggered such an intense response? Sanchez stepped back, signaling to another security officer nearby. "Get the secondary screening unit in here," he ordered quietly. "We need this to be thorough." The officers around Olivia kept their movements steady and professional. Titan's eyes never left the suitcase as the secondary screening began. Every item was carefully examined, the bag turned inside out with meticulous precision. But still, nothing seemed out of place. No unusual items, no hidden compartments. The unease was beginning to spread through the crowd. A ripple of whispers passed among the nearby passengers, all of them trying to make sense of the commotion. Some stood still, others slowly began to edge away, but none of them could tear their eyes away from the escalating scene. Titan stood motionless, his body rigid. His gaze remained fixed on the suitcase, as if daring anyone to challenge his certainty. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jake stepped forward. His hands were steady as he began to lift the suitcase, slowly pulling back the fabric from one of the hidden compartments near the bottom. The metallic scent was growing stronger now, unmistakable, almost tangible. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Whatever was inside that suitcase, it was far from ordinary. The officers around him began to move with purpose. Titan remained calm, but his posture was tense, every muscle in his body prepared for the moment when the hidden device would be revealed. Jake's hand moved carefully across the fabric, revealing a strange, compact device, metallic, smooth, with a set of wires wrapped around it. His eyes narrowed. It wasn't a bomb, not yet. But it was something far more dangerous, a trigger, a detonator hidden inside the suitcase. He could feel the weight of the moment. This was no longer just a security concern. It was a life or death situation. Olivia gasped, her face turning pale as she saw the device for the first time. She took a step back, her hands shaking. "What is that? What's happening?" Jake didn't answer immediately. He was already taking action, his voice sharp as he turned to Officer Sanchez. "Get the bomb squad in here now. We've got a live device." Sanchez didn't hesitate. "On it." Titan's behavior shifted slightly. The dog's body language, now a mixture of relief and focus. He had done his job, and it wasn't over yet. The bomb squad was on their way, but in that moment, Titan remained the calmest presence in the room, his eyes still locked on the device. The tension in the terminal had reached a breaking point. Passengers had begun to crowd around, drawn by the growing security presence. The sense of unease was palpable, but the officers worked efficiently, maintaining a tight perimeter around the area. They knew the threat wasn't over yet. As the bomb squad team arrived, their lead technician immediately took over, donning protective gear as they moved in on the device. The technician's eyes scanned the object with methodical precision before turning to Jake. "This is definitely not just a miscommunication. We're looking at a trigger mechanism for something bigger. Could have been a bomb, could have been something else. Either way, we'll take it from here." Jake nodded, his eyes still on Titan. "You did good, Titan." The K9 unit remained unmoving, the dog's expression still focused. There was no sign of anxiety in him, no sign of stress. His mission had been clear, and he had executed it with unflinching precision. Jake could feel a sense of pride well up inside him. Titan was the reason they were going to stop a disaster from happening. As the bomb squad began their work, a wave of relief spread through the security team, though the situation wasn't over yet. They needed to figure out who had placed the device in Olivia's bag and why. The next phase of the operation would be to track down the courier responsible for this attempted attack. It wasn't long before the investigative team arrived. Among them was Detective Reed, a seasoned investigator with years of experience in cases of terrorism and threats against the public. He wasted no time assessing the situation, his sharp eyes scanning the bomb squad's work as he processed the device's technical details. It wasn't sophisticated, but it didn't need to be. It was meant to go off remotely once the device was in the air. Detective Reed turned to Officer Jake. "Tell me what happened." Jake quickly briefed him, recounting Titan's behavior and the discovery of the device. "We still don't know how or why it was in her bag, but Titan didn't hesitate. The moment he locked onto her, we knew something was wrong." Reed nodded. His mind was already working through the possibilities. He knew they needed answers fast. Olivia, still shaken, was being questioned by another officer nearby. She was visibly distraught, her voice trembling as she explained that she had packed the bag herself. She had no idea how the device ended up inside her suitcase. "I don't even know what that is," Olivia had said, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm just traveling. Please, I have no idea what's going on." Reed didn't doubt her sincerity. Her distress seemed genuine. This wasn't the behavior of someone complicit in a plot, but someone had used her, someone had manipulated her into unknowingly carrying a dangerous device onto the flight. Reed's eyes flicked to the suitcase, where the bomb squad was still carefully dismantling the trigger mechanism. "We'll need to check the baggage records, trace where this suitcase was packed. There's a connection to someone." Officer Jake, still standing by Titan's side, could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on him. They weren't just dealing with an accidental misstep. This was intentional. Whoever had orchestrated this plot had done so with a clear purpose. As the investigation unfolded, the search for the courier who had planted the device became more urgent. Who had put it there? And why had they chosen Olivia as an unwitting pawn? The investigation was moving fast. Detective Reed worked relentlessly, sifting through surveillance footage, examining the timeline of Olivia's movements through the airport, and cross-referencing passenger manifests. It didn't take long for him to piece together the details. Olivia had been targeted, used as a courier without her knowledge, but who was behind it? The breakthrough came when they discovered that Olivia had checked in her suitcase at a different terminal, a terminal that wasn't part of her intended flight path. It seemed she had been innocently recruited by someone with knowledge of airport security procedures. "Someone knew she would be flying out today," Reed said, his voice low as he gathered the officers and bomb squad technicians around. "And they used her, knowing she wouldn't suspect a thing." Reed's eyes narrowed as he stared at the footage again. He was seeing a man dressed as a fellow passenger approach Olivia just moments before she'd entered the security checkpoint. He slipped something into her bag, seemingly unnoticed. The man then disappeared into the crowd, slipping away before anyone could identify him. "That's our man," Reed said, his gaze fixed on the image. "We need to track him down, fast." The officers sprang into action, tracing the man's whereabouts through airport records. Meanwhile, Olivia remained in the secure area, constantly reassured by the officers, though still rattled by the events. She had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, yet Titan's actions had prevented a disaster. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion, fear, and disbelief, but there was a deep sense of gratitude that overwhelmed her. As the investigation intensified, the bomb squad confirmed that the device in the suitcase wasn't an immediate threat. It had been designed to be triggered remotely once the plane had ascended. The bomb squad technicians worked tirelessly to ensure the device was neutralized. Still, the potential for catastrophe had been staggering. Titan had saved not only Olivia, but potentially hundreds of lives. The man behind the plot was eventually apprehended, and the pieces of the conspiracy began to unfold. The device, it turned out, was part of a larger scheme intended to cause chaos. But thanks to Titan's sharp instincts, a crisis had been averted. As the dust settled, the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the airport terminal. The bomb squad had left, and the area was cleared. Olivia, though still shaken, had been given the all-clear and escorted out of the airport. Her flight cancelled, but her life spared. Inside the terminal, a small crowd had gathered, and news of Titan's heroic actions had begun to spread. The officers, their faces tired but relieved, exchanged quiet words of approval. Titan, still by Officer Jake's side, was now resting quietly, his work done. His expression was calm, composed, unshaken by the chaos he had just faced. But there was one more thing left to do. The airport management, along with the local authorities, had organized a small ceremony in honor of Titan's bravery. As Jake and Titan stepped forward, the crowd grew silent. The officers who had worked tirelessly beside them, the bomb squad technicians, even the few onlookers who had witnessed the events, all stood in unison. A plaque was unveiled, a golden tribute to Titan, engraved with his name, his breed, and the words "in service of humanity." The crowd erupted into applause. It wasn't just the recognition of a well-trained service dog. It was the acknowledgement of the life-saving role he had played in preventing a tragedy. Jake looked down at Titan, who stood tall and proud, his tail wagging gently. The dog's calm demeanor was a sharp contrast to the chaotic events of the day. Titan had done his job, and he had done it well. Officer Jake stepped forward, placing a hand on Titan's shoulder. "This is Titan, and today he saved lives." His voice cracked slightly with emotion. He had known Titan for years, had trained him, and had trusted him with his life countless times. But today, Titan had surpassed even those expectations. The crowd cheered louder now, their applause a testament to Titan's role in stopping what could have been a devastating disaster. But Titan didn't need the applause. He simply stood there, unwavering and calm, the true hero of the day. Olivia, who had been brought back into the terminal to witness the recognition, stood at the back of the room. She watched as the dog was honored, the full weight of what had happened slowly sinking in. She had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, but Titan had been there to protect her and everyone else around her. Her eyes filled with tears of gratitude, and she took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the day begin to lift. As the ceremony came to a close, Jake bent down and patted Titan's head. The dog turned his gaze upward, his eyes soft but knowing. There was no need for words. Titan had already understood what was at stake, and he had performed his duty flawlessly. For Titan, it wasn't about fame, accolades, or recognition. It was simply about doing his job protecting the people he was trained to protect. But as the crowd slowly dissipated and Jake and Titan began to leave, he felt something shift. The weight of the day, of the close call, was behind them now. Olivia was safe, the airport was safe, and the dangerous plot had been thwarted. Titan trotted beside his handler, his steps measured and calm. They made their way to the exit, the sound of Titan's paws tapping against the terminal floor, the only noise that filled the otherwise quiet space. The final moment of the day was quiet. The terminal had returned to normal, the passengers once again going about their business, though many of them still whispered about the heroic dog who had prevented a tragedy. For Jake and Titan, the work was done, but in the silence, Jake felt a profound sense of gratitude for his partner, for Titan. And as they walked out into the cool evening air, Jake couldn't help but smile. Titan had done more than just his job. He had saved lives, and to Jake there was no greater reward than that.